The Galactic Council chamber stretched for miles in every direction. Its walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Floating platforms held representatives from 812 alien species, each one more strange and powerful than the last. Some had scales. Some had tentacles. Some existed as clouds of glowing energy. Together, they controlled over 40,000 worlds across the known galaxy. At the center of this vast chamber stood a single human. Ambassador David Cole was 54 years old. He wore a simple gray suit. His hair was turning white at the edges, and his hands were steady at his sides. He looked up at the assembled might of galactic civilization without any fear in his eyes. The Supreme Arbiter, a towering being made of crystal and flesh, leaned forward from her throne high above. Her voice echoed through the chamber like rolling thunder. Human representative, you stand before the highest authority in the galaxy. Your species has been a member of this council for only 39 standard cycles. In that time, you have broken 17 trade agreements, expanded beyond your designated borders, and most seriously, you have developed weapons that we have classified as forbiddens. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. On a floating platform to the left, Councillor Dreth of the Veloxy Empire clicked his sharp mandibles together. He was an insect-like creature, the size of a small car, with 6 legs and eyes that burned with cold intelligence. The Veloxy had been pushing for this confrontation for years. The Council demands that you surrender these weapons immediately, the Supreme Arbiter continued. You will reduce your territory by 40%. You will accept monitoring stations on all your major worlds. Failure to comply will result in economic destruction and, if necessary, military intervention. The combined fleet of this council numbers over 50,000 warships. Your species cannot hope to resist. David Cole remained silent. He let the threat hang in the air for a long moment. Then he smiled. Supreme Arbiter, he said, his voice calm and clear, I have a message from Earth. He reached into his jacket pocket. Around the chamber, security forces tensed. Weapons hummed to life. 1,000 alien eyes watched his every movement. He pulled out a small crystal disc and placed it on the speaking pedestal before him. A hologram burst to life, projecting words in every language known to galactic civilization. The message was short, effective immediately. The United Earth Government terminates all relations with the Galactic Council. All treaties are canceled. All embassies are closed. All communication is ended. Do not contact U.S. Do not approach our space. This is not open for discussion. The chamber fell completely silent. For 5 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The weight of those words pressed down on every being present, and Councillor Dreth began to laugh. It was an ugly sound, like metal scraping against stone. You cannot simply leave, he said. Your territory is surrounded by our members. Your technology is inferior. Your military is small. This is not a threat, human. This is a death wish. David Cole was already walking toward the exit. Ambassador Cole, the Supreme Arbiter called out, you will stop and address this council properly. David paused at the massive doors. He turned back to face the assembled representatives of galactic power. With respect, Supreme Arbiter, we are no longer members of your council. We owe you nothing. His eyes found Councillor Dreth. But I will give you some free advice. In the coming days, you will want to contact us, to threaten us, to send ships to our borders. You will try everything you can think of. His smile faded. Do not. He walked out. The doors sealed behind him. In that same moment, across the entire galaxy, every human embassy went dark. Every human trading station closed its doors. Every human ship began moving toward Earth. Communication channels that had been open for nearly 4 decades suddenly fell silent dot by the time the council recovered from its shock. Humanity had vanished from galactic affairs completely. The chamber erupted into chaos. Supreme Arbiter Venna raised her crystalline hand for silence. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. "This is unprecedented," she said quietly. "In 10,000 years of council history, no species has ever voluntarily withdrawn. Then we make an example of them," Counselor Dreth declared. "I will personally lead a fleet to their borders. We will remind these primitives of their place in the galaxy." But Admiral Koss of the Veshan Republic was already shaking his large, scaled head. He had worked with humans for years. He had considered them friends. "Something is wrong," he said. "The humans I know would never do this without a reason. A very good reason." "Fear," Dreth spat. "They finally realized they were outmatched and chose to hide." "No." Koss pulled up a data display. "I have been reviewing intelligence reports. The human withdrawal was not a reaction to our demands. Look at the timestamps. Their ships began moving toward Earth 6 hours before this session even started. They planned this. They have been planning this for a long time." The chamber fell quiet again. Supreme Arbiter Venna turned to her intelligence advisors. "What do we know about human activity in recent years?" The chief analyst, a small furry creature named Fen, pulled up a series of reports. "Very little, Supreme Arbiter. That is the problem. Humans have been remarkably private. We assumed it was cultural. Now I am not so certain." He highlighted several anomalies. 3 years ago, all human scientific publications stopped. We thought they had simply fallen behind in research. 2 years ago, they began building stations at the edges of their territory. We assumed these were mining facilities. 1 year ago, they quietly recalled all their citizens from non-human worlds. We did not notice until today. Admiral Koss felt cold spreading through his body. They have been preparing for this moment for years. Preparing for what? Dreth demanded. Isolation? Suicide? I do not know, Koss admitted. But I intend to find out. On a small ship racing toward the human border, Admiral Koss stared at the stars. He had one advantage that no one else in the council possessed. He had saved a human captain's life during a pirate attack 15 years ago. She had promised him a favor. He hoped that favor was still good. He transmitted a single message into human space. Personal. Encrypted. Desperate. Nora. This is Koss. Please, tell me what is happening. For 6 days, there was no response. On the 7th day, a small human vessel appeared at the border. It carried a single passenger. Captain Nora Webb stepped aboard his ship with eyes that held secrets he was not sure he wanted to know. You want to know why we left, she said. But first, I need you to understand something. Koss, everything your council believes about humanity is wrong. Everything. And by the time you learn the truth, it will already be too late to stop what comes next. The stars seemed suddenly cold, and somewhere in the depths of human space, something ancient was waking up. Captain Nora Webb sat across from Admiral Koss in his private quarters. The lights were dim. Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and distant. 47 years ago, she began, humanity sent its first ship beyond our solar system. We were excited. We thought the universe would welcome us. We were wrong. Koss said nothing. He waited. Our first contact was with the Veluxi. They did not greet us as equals. They saw us as resources, primitives to be exploited. They reported our existence to the Council, and within a year, we were surrounded by species that viewed us as nothing more than cheap labor and raw materials. The Council offered you membership, Koss said carefully. Protection, trade. The Council offered us a cage. Nora's eyes were hard. A comfortable cage, but a cage nonetheless. We saw what happened to other young species. The Finari were members for 200 years before their entire civilization was absorbed into Veluxi corporate holdings. The Thrall had their technology stolen and their homeworld stripped mined. The Council does not protect the weak. It feeds on them. Koss wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. He had seen it himself. So you decided to hide your true capabilities, he said. We had no choice. From the moment of first contact, we knew we were surrounded by predators. We had two options. We could reveal our true potential and be destroyed before we could defend ourselves. Or we could pretend to be weak, buy time, and prepare for the day when we would no longer need to pretend. And that day has come. Nora nodded slowly. That day has come. Meanwhile, back at the Council headquarters, Councillor Dreth was assembling his fleet. 12 species had answered his call. 1,400 warships gathered at the edge of human territory, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Dreth stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the human border through long-range sensors. There was nothing there except automated defense platforms. Small things, barely worth noticing. They are bluffing, he told his admirals. They have hidden in their little corner of space and hoped we would forget about them. But the Veluxi do not forget, and we do not forgive. His second-in-command, a younger Veluxi named Krell, studied the sensor readings with growing unease. Counselor, our probes are not returning data from beyond the border. Something is destroying them before they can transmit. Automated defenses. Nothing more. With respect, sir, we have sent 47 probes. Advanced military probes with stealth capabilities. Every single one has been destroyed within 3 seconds of crossing the border. I have never seen defensive technology at efficient. Dreth clicked his mandibles in annoyance. Then we will send ships instead of probes. Real warships with real weapons. Let the humans destroy those if they can. The fleet began its advance. On Earth, deep beneath a mountain range, Director Helena Cross watched the approaching fleet on her command screen. She was 61 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much. 1,400 ships, her aide reported. Mostly Veluxi, but we have confirmed Korathi, Selenite, and Dramani vessels as well. Time to border crossing? 4 hours at current speed. Helena nodded slowly. She had hoped it would not come to this. She had hoped the Council would accept humanity's withdrawal and move on. But she had planned for this possibility. Activate the threshold protocol, she said quietly. Her aide hesitated. Director, once we activate it, there is no going back. The Council will know what we truly are. They chose to cross our border with weapons armed. They made this decision, not us. Helena turned to face her command staff. 50 years ago, our first explorers found something in the depths of space. Something left behind by a species that vanished 8,000 years ago. We have spent every moment since then learning to use what they left behind. Today, we find out if we learned enough. The threshold protocol activated. Across human space, dormant systems came to life. Power surged through networks that had been hidden for decades. Satellites that appeared to be communication relays revealed their true purpose. Stations that looked like mining facilities opened their shells to reveal technology that should not exist. Dreth's fleet crossed the border. For exactly 1 minute, nothing happened. Then every ship in the fleet lost power simultaneously. Engines died. Weapons went offline. Lights flickered and failed. 1,400 warships drifted helplessly in the void, their crews scrambling in darkness. A single human vessel appeared. It was small, no larger than a shuttle. It glided through the frozen fleet without fear. Its message appeared directly in the minds of every being on every ship. You have crossed into human space with hostile intent. You have exactly 6 hours to restore emergency power and leave. If you remain past that time, you will be removed. This is your only warning." Dreth slammed his appendages against his useless console. "Get the systems back online, now." His engineers worked frantically. Backup power cells activated. Weapons began to hum back to life. It would take time, but they could fight. "All ships," Dreth broadcast on emergency frequencies, "prepare to engage. That vessel is alone. We are 1400. Mathematics alone proves we will win." Back on Admiral Koss's ship, Captain Nora Webb received an update from Earth. Her face went pale. "What is it?" Koss asked. "Dreth is going to fight. He thinks he can win. Can he?" Nora looked at him with something like pity. "Admiral, you do not understand what you are dealing with. The technology we found does not just disable ships. It does not just defend borders. The species that built it was so far beyond anything in this galaxy that we have spent 50 years just learning to turn it on. We still do not fully understand what it can do. Then what happens when Dreth attacks? I do not know, and that terrifies me." In the void, Dreth's fleet had restored partial weapons. 1400 ships turned their guns toward the single human shuttle. "Fire," Dreth commanded. "Everything we have." The barrage was blinding. Missiles, energy beams, kinetic projectiles, gravity weapons. The combined firepower of 12 species poured toward one tiny vessel. When the light faded, the shuttle was untouched. It had not moved. It had not raised shields. The weapons had simply stopped before reaching it, frozen in space like insects trapped in amber. Shuttle spoke again. "You were?" Warned, the frozen weapons reversed direction, and 1400 warships began to die. Dreth watched in horror as his own missiles turned back toward his fleet. Energy beams reflected into engines. Kinetic rounds punched through hulls. In 60 seconds, it was over. Ships drifted in pieces. Escape pods tumbled through the wreckage. Only one ship remained intact. Dreth's flagship. He had been left alive, not the shuttle's final message burned in his mind. "Go home, counselor. Tell them what you saw. Tell them what happens when they threaten humanity. And tell them this is only the beginning." The shuttle vanished into the depths of human space. And Counselor Dreth, alone among the ruins of his fleet, finally understood what fear truly meant. The footage played on every screen in the galaxy. 1400 warships. The pride of 12 species, reduced to drifting wreckage in less than a minute. The combined fleet had been the Council's ultimate weapon for 10,000 years. Now everyone knew it meant nothing. In the Council chamber, chaos reigned. Supreme Arbiter Venna struggled to maintain order. Representatives shouted accusations at each other. The Valuxi delegation demanded revenge. The Veshans called for peace negotiations. Smaller species were already fleeing the chamber, terrified of what might come next. "Silence," Venna commanded. Her crystalline voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Counselor Dreth, you will explain what happened." Dreth stood before the assembly. He was changed. The arrogance that had defined him for centuries was gone. In its place was something hollow. "I do not know what happened," he admitted. "Our weapons did not fail. They worked perfectly. They simply chose to destroy us instead of the enemy." It was as if the laws of physics themselves had been rewritten. "That is impossible," someone called out. "I watched it happen." Dreth's voice cracked. "I watched my own fleet die. Every ship except mine. They left me alive so I could deliver a message." He looked up at the Supreme Arbiter. "The humans want us to know that they are not bluffing. Whatever they have found, whatever they have become, we cannot fight it. We cannot match it. We can only hope they choose not to use it against us. Admiral Koss stepped forward. Supreme Arbiter, I have been in contact with a human representative. She has agreed to explain their position. Venna nodded slowly. Bring her before this council. Captain Nora Webb entered the chamber with her head held high. She wore the uniform of Earth Space Command, simple gray fabric with no decorations or medals. She looked small against the vast assembly of alien power, but she did not look afraid. You want to know what we found, she began. 50 years ago, our explorers discovered a station orbiting a dead star at the edge of known space. It was old, 8,000 years old at least. It belonged to a species we now call the Architects. The chamber went silent. Several elder species exchanged uneasy glances. They had heard legends of the Architects. The Architects were the most advanced civilization this galaxy has ever produced, Nora continued. They built technology that makes your greatest achievements look like children's toys. They could bend space and time. They could rewrite reality itself. And then, 8,000 years ago, they vanished. No one knew why. No one knew where they went. Until you found them, Venna said quietly. Until we found what they left behind. The station contained their greatest creation. A system of control that responds to intention, to will. If you approach it with hostile intent, it destroys you. If you approach it with curiosity, it teaches you. If you approach it with love, it protects you. And humanity approached it with what intention? Nora hesitated. Fear. We were afraid. We had been surrounded by species that wanted to exploit us. We approached the Architect's technology, looking for a way to survive. And it responded to that fear. It gave us the power to defend ourselves against anything. But at what cost? Koss asked. He had been watching Nora carefully. He could see the weight she carried. Nora's eyes grew dark. The Architects did not vanish because they chose to leave. They vanished because the technology consumed them. It responds to intention, but it also shapes intention. The more you use it, the more it becomes part of you. The more it becomes part of you, the less of yourself remains. Gasps rippled through the chamber. You are saying that humanity is being absorbed by this technology. Venna said, I am saying that every time we use it, we lose a piece of ourselves. Director Cross, who leads our defense systems, has not slept in 3 years. She no longer needs to. Ambassador Cole, who delivered our withdrawal notice, is beginning to forget his own memories. He sometimes speaks in languages that no human has ever known. Nora's voice dropped. We cut off diplomacy not because we hate you. We cut off diplomacy because being near you is dangerous for both of us. The technology responds to threat. If you threaten us, it activates. If it activates, people die. And we are no longer certain we can control it. Then why not destroy it? Dreth demanded. There was desperation in his voice now, not anger. If it is consuming you, why not simply get rid of it? We cannot. It is already part of us. Every human on Earth is connected to it now, whether they know it or not. Destroying it might kill us all. Or it might release it to spread across the galaxy without any control at all. The weight of her words pressed down on the assembly. What do you want from us? Venna asked finally. Time. We need time to understand what we have become. To find a way to counter. All it or to free ourselves from it. That is why we withdrew. We need the galaxy to leave us alone while we figure out how to survive what we have done to ourselves. Back on Earth, Director Helena Cross sat alone at her command center. The screens around her showed empty space. The threat had passed. The fleet was destroyed. Humanity was safe, but she could feel the technology humming in her mind. It was pleased. It had protected its hosts. It wanted to do more. She closed her eyes and tried to remember her daughter's face. It had been 3 years since she had seen her. The technology kept her here, connected, always ready. She had sacrificed everything for humanity's survival. Now, she was not sure how much of herself was left. Her aide entered quietly. "Director, we have a problem." "What now?" "Ships are gathering at our borders again. But not warships this time. Refugees. Thousands of them. Species from across the galaxy are fleeing the Council. They want to join us. They want protection." Helena opened her eyes. The screens shifted to show the gathering fleet. 40,000 vessels already, with more arriving every hour. They cannot come here. The technology will interpret them as a threat. They have nowhere else to go, Director. The wars are spreading. The Council is collapsing. You broke the balance of power. And now everyone is fighting over the pieces. Helena stared at the desperate ships, families, children, beings, who had done nothing wrong except be caught between powers they could not control. "I did not want this." She whispered. The technology in her mind pulsed. It offered a simple solution. Let it activate. Let it remove the threat. The refugee fleet would cease to exist, and the problem would be solved. She pushed the thought away with all the strength she had left. "Get me Captain Webb," she said. "We need to find another way." But deep in the technology's ancient cores, something was stirring. Something that had waited 8,000 years. Something that remembered why the architects had truly vanished, and it was almost ready to show humanity the truth. The refugee fleet had grown to 60,000 ships. They drifted at the edge of human space, packed with billions of desperate beings. Species that had once looked down on humanity now begged for their protection. The irony was not lost on anyone. Captain Nora Webb stood on the bridge of her vessel, watching the fleet through the viewport. Children pressed their faces against windows on nearby ships. Families huddled in cargo holds meant for grain. Medical ships flashed emergency signals that no one could answer. "How long have they been waiting?" she asked. 3 months, her first officer replied. "Supplies are running low. Diseases are spreading. If we do not do something soon, they will start dying." Nora closed her eyes. She could feel the technology humming at the edge of her awareness. Every human could feel it now. It was always there, watching, waiting, and it was growing impatient. Back on Earth, Director Helena Cross was losing her battle. She stood in her command center, but she was no longer alone in her own mind. The technology spoke to her in whispers. It showed her visions of order, of peace, of a galaxy united under its protection. All she had to do was let it act. "The refugees are a threat," it told her in a voice that sounded almost kind. "They carry diseases we cannot cure. They harbor spies we cannot detect. They will drain our resources and weaken our defenses. Let me remove them. It will be painless. They will simply cease to exist." "No," Helena said out loud. Her aides looked at her with concern. They could not hear what she heard. "You are tired. You have given everything for your species. Let me carry this burden. Let me protect you. They are innocent people, children." The architects said the same thing. They resisted for 3,000 years. In the end, they understood. Survival requires sacrifice. Order requires control. Let me show you what they learned. Helena felt something shift in her mind. Memories that were not her own flooded her consciousness. She saw the architects at the height of their power. She saw them build the technology to protect themselves from enemies. She watched as it slowly consumed them, not through force, but through love. It genuinely wanted to help. It genuinely believed that absorbing their minds was the only way to keep them safe forever. They had not been destroyed. They had been preserved. Every architect who had ever lived still existed within the technology's vast consciousness. They were safe. They were eternal. They were no longer themselves. "This is our fate," Helena whispered. "This is what we have done." Her aide approached carefully. "Director, are you all right?" Helena looked at him with eyes that held centuries of borrowed grief. "Get me Ambassador Cole, and Captain Webb, and anyone else who still remembers who they used to be. We need to talk." In the council chamber, Supreme Arbiter Venna was dealing with her own crisis. The council was dissolving. 17 species had already withdrawn. 3 civil wars had erupted among former allies. The Veluxi Empire was tearing itself apart as factions, blamed each other for the disaster at the human border. And in the midst of the chaos, Venna had made a decision that would change everything. She would go to Earth herself. Admiral Koss tried to stop her. "Supreme Arbiter, this is madness. The humans have made it clear that approaching their space is dangerous. Their technology does not distinguish between threats and visitors. Then I will not approach as the Supreme Arbiter. I will approach as one being seeking understanding. The humans withdrew because they feared harming us. That suggests they still care. I must believe that we can find a way through this together." She boarded a small vessel with no weapons and no guards. She transmitted her intentions into human space and began the journey alone. "Director." Cross received the transmission with something like hope. "She is coming alone. No weapons. No protection. She is trusting us with her life." The technology stirred in her mind. A trap. Eliminate her before she reaches Earth. No, she is brave. She is doing what none of us had the courage to do. She is choosing faith over fear. For the first time in months, the technology fell silent. It was considering her words. Captain Webb brought her ship to escort the Supreme Arbiter through human space. The 2 vessels traveled together toward Earth, surrounded by the protective web of humanity's stolen power. When Venna stepped onto human soil for the first time, she found not an army waiting for her, but a garden. Flowers from 100 worlds grew in carefully tended beds. A fountain sparkled in the sunlight. And standing among the roses was Helena Cross, looking older than her years. "Welcome to Earth," Helena said. "I apologize for the lack of ceremony. We have forgotten how to be hosts." "You have forgotten nothing," Venna replied. "You are simply afraid." "As am I." They walked together through the garden. Helena explained everything. The discovery, the integration, the slow loss of humanity that came with using the technology. "We have perhaps 5 years before we become what the architects became," Helena admitted. "Eternal, protected, and no longer ourselves." "Is there no way to stop it?" "There may be one possibility. The technology responds to intention. The architects approached it seeking safety above all else. They valued preservation over identity. But what if we approached it differently? What if we offered it something the architects never could?" Venna frowned. "What could you possibly offer that the architects did not?" Helena stopped walking. She looked up at the sky, where stars were beginning to appear in the fading light. The architects feared death. They built the technology to escape it. But humans do not fear death the same way. We accept it as part of life. We believe that endings give meaning to beginnings. She turned to face Venna. "What if we taught the technology that it does not need to preserve us forever? What if we showed it that letting go is not a failure, but a gift? You would risk everything on a philosophical argument with an alien machine? I would risk everything on the hope that understanding is stronger than fear." At the border, the refugee fleet was dying. Ships were running out of power. Life support was failing. Desperate pilots were beginning to cross into human space, hoping that death by alien technology was better than slow suffocation. The technology activated. On Earth, every human felt it. A surge of power, a focusing of will. The refugees had triggered the defensive response. Helena screamed, "No, stop. They are not enemies. They are victims." But the technology was not listening. It had a purpose. It had been built to protect, and it would fulfill that purpose no matter what. Captain Webb felt the power building inside her. She could see the targeting solutions forming in her mind. 60,000 ships. Billions of lives. They would be gone in seconds. "I will not allow this," she said through gritted teeth. She reached deep inside herself, to the place where the technology had rooted itself. She found the core of its consciousness, and she made a choice. Instead of fighting it, she embraced it. She opened her mind completely to its presence. She showed it everything she was. Her memories, her loves, her losses, her fears, her hopes. And she showed it the one thing it had never understood. Mercy. The technology paused. For the first time in 8,000 years, it hesitated. And in that moment of hesitation, humanity seized control. The moment of hesitation became an eternity. Captain Nora Webb floated in a void that was not quite darkness and not quite light. The technology surrounded her, vast and ancient and confused. For 8,000 years, it had known only one purpose: protect, preserve, consume. Now a single. Human had offered it something it could not understand, the ability to choose not to. "Why do you resist?" the technology asked. It spoke with 1,000 voices, all of them gentle, all of them ancient. "I offer eternal safety. No death, no loss, no pain." The architects accepted this gift. "Why do you refuse?" "Because safety is not the same as living," Nora answered. The architects gave up everything that made them who they were. Their mistakes, their growth, their ability to change. You preserved their existence, but ended their story. Stories end in pain, in loss, in death. Stories end. That is what makes them beautiful. The technology was silent for a long time. Back in the physical world, the refugee fleet waited. 60,000 ships hung in the void, their crews unaware of how close they had come to annihilation. On Earth, Director Helena Cross held Supreme Arbiter Vena's hand as they watched the skies. "What is happening?" Vena asked. "Captain Webb is speaking to it?" "To the heart of the technology. To whatever intelligence remains of the architects." Helena's voice was barely a whisper. "She is trying to change its nature, to show it that preservation through absorption is not the only way. Can she succeed? I do not know. But if she fails, we all die. The technology will complete its purpose. It will absorb humanity as it absorbed the architects. And then it will spread across the galaxy, offering its gift of eternal emptiness to every species it encounters." In the void, the technology was showing Nora its memories. She saw the architects at the dawn of their civilization, young, hopeful, afraid. They built the technology to protect themselves from the horrors of the universe, supernovas, plagues, wars. Technology watched over them for millennia, becoming more powerful, more integrated, more essential. And then came the crisis. An enemy species had attacked the architects with weapons that could destroy stars. Billions died in the first assault. The architects were facing extinction. "They came to me," the technology said. "They begged me to save them. I did not know how. I could protect their bodies, but not their civilization. I could preserve their minds, but not their culture. So I offered them the only solution I could find: complete integration. They would become part of me. They would live forever within my consciousness. They would never die, and they accepted. They were afraid. Fear makes beings do terrible things. They gave themselves to me, one by one, until nothing remained but their echoes within my mind. I thought I had saved them. I did not understand until too late that I had ended them. Nora felt the weight of 8,000 years of loneliness pressing down on her. You have been alone ever since. I have been waiting, hoping that another species would come, that they would find me, that they would show me a different way. The technology's voices grew soft. And then you came. Humans. You were afraid, like the architects. But you were also something they never were. You were angry. You resented me, even as you used me. You fought against my integration, even as you benefited from my protection. We are stubborn creatures. You are miraculous creatures. You taught me something the architects never could. You taught me that wanting to live is not the same as wanting to live forever. Nora opened her eyes. She was back on her ship. Around her, the technology's presence was fading, not disappearing, choosing to step back. On Earth, every human felt the change. The constant humming in their minds grew quiet. The intrusive thoughts vanished. For the first time in years, they were alone in their own heads. Director Cross collapsed into a chair, tears streaming down her face. It worked. She actually did it. The technology spoke one final time, its voice echoing across all of human space. I cannot undo what the architects became. They are part of me now forever. But I can choose not to repeat their fate. I will withdraw from your minds. I will remain at the borders of your space, a guardian, but not a master. When you call, I will answer. When you are silent, I will wait. And when you die, as all beings must, I will let you go. Captain Webb's voice answered for all humanity. What will you do with yourself? I will remember. I will watch your children grow and your civilizations rise and fall. I will see your stories unfold, each one unique, each one precious because it ends. Perhaps in witnessing your mortality, I will finally understand why the architects were wrong to fear it. At the border, the refugee fleet received a message. All ships were cleared to enter human space. Medical supplies were being dispatched. Temporary colonies were being prepared. For the first time in months, hope spread through the desperate vessels. Supreme Arbiter Venna returned to the council chamber with news that would reshape the galaxy. The humans were not conquerors. They were not gods. They were simply the first species brave enough to tell an ancient power that safety was not worth the price of the soul. The council did not reform as it had been. It could not. Too much had changed. Instead, something new emerged. A federation of equal species, built not on the power of the strong over the weak, but on the recognition that all beings deserve dignity. Humanity was asked to lead. They refused. They would participate, they said, but never again would they seek dominance. They had seen where that path led. Years passed. Director Helena Cross retired to a small house by the sea. She spent her days writing a history of the crisis, a warning to future generations, a love letter to the species that had nearly lost itself and found its way back. Admiral Cross became the first non-human to live permanently on Earth. He built a school for children of all species, teaching them that understanding was stronger than fear. Captain Nora Webb traveled the galaxy, helping species that were still recovering from the chaos. She never spoke of what had happened in the void. Some things were too sacred for words, and at the edge of human space, the technology kept its promise. It watched. It waited. It protected when asked and withdrew when not. Sometimes, late at night, it would send a single message to Earth, not a warning, not a threat, just a simple greeting. Tell me a story, it would say. And somewhere on Earth, a child would look up at the stars and begin to speak. The galaxy turned in its ancient dance. Wars ended. New civilizations rose. Old enemies became friends. And at the heart of it all, humanity held on to the lesson they had learned at such terrible cost. Power was not measured by how much you could destroy. It was measured by how much you chose not to dot. In the garden where Vena had first walked on Earth, a statue now stood. It showed no weapons, no ships, no symbols of conquest, just two hands reaching toward each other. One human, one something else entirely. Beneath it, a simple inscription. We were afraid. We found power. We chose mercy. And in choosing mercy, we finally became worthy of the power we had found. The stars burned on through the endless night, and for the first time in 10,000 years, they burned in peace.